Okay. Deme un segundito para aceptar a todos que están aquí, porque hay más personas aquí que están entrando y no los puedo aceptar a la misma vez.
¿Cómo?
Que
¿Qué cosa? Está entre las que están. Ah, sí, yo le mandé el...
aquí ya están todos, creo. Si es que entran más, voy a entrar.
Sobre
Ok.
escritores.
Ok. Y pueden escucharme, sí. Ok. Ok, ya está.
¿Están todos?
Sí, puede ver.
¿Listo?
Sí.
Ok. Y lo apuntamos ahí. Luego,
Sí.
esto primero para mí. Okay. All right. Y ahí está.
Y está bien, sí. Está bien.
All right. Well, all right. Well, we can start. ¿Y la pones para grabar? Recording?
Sí, ya debe estar recording, yeah. Yeah, it's, oh no. Sí, está recording.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, good afternoon. Welcome everyone, the ones who are joining us virtually. My name is Alberto Vargas. I'm the Associate Director of LASIS, and it's my pleasure to welcome you to another lecture. I'm gonna introduce our friend and colleague, Professor Cesar Ferreira, from the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee. Professor Ferreira teaches Latin American literature there. He holds a PhD from the University of Texas at Austin, and he's the author of Culture and Customs of Peru, and has edited multiple volumes and other books. And Professor Ferreira is going to introduce our speaker today, and welcome everyone. So, thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for coming. And thanks to those of you who are joining us virtually, of course, as well. I am very grateful to Alberto Vargas and to LASIS for making Alonso's visit to Madison possible. Special thanks to Sarah Ribb as well, who made things easy for us to be here today. Alonso Cueto is a native of Lima, Peru, and he is the author of many novels, several collections of short fiction, plays, essays, and children's literature. He is an important protagonist in contemporary Peruvian and Latin American letters. And some of his novels include The Blue Hour, La Hora Azul, which won the Premio Herralde de Novela, the Herralde Prize for the novel in Spain in 2005. He's also authored El Susurro de la Mujer Ballena, which was a runner-up for the 2007 Premio Iberoamericano Planeta-Casa de América Prize. La Viajera del Viento, or The Wind Traveler, was recently published by the University of Texas Press as well. But we'd be here all afternoon if I had to mention all of his books.
Mm-hmm.
His most recent novel is Otras Caricias, published in 2021. And all of these novels explore a vast number of intricate issues in contemporary Peruvian society, including the years of violence and turmoil brought about by the war between the Peruvian state and the Shining Path in the 1980s and 1990s. Several of Alonso's books have been made into films, and his works have been translated now into 20 languages. He has been the recipient of a writer's grant from the John Guggenheim Foundation, the Anna Seghers Prize in Germany, and in 2017, he was awarded the Medal for Service to Culture by the government of Peru. Alonso holds a PhD in Latin American literature from the University of Texas at Austin, and he is a member of the Peruvian Academy of Language. This afternoon, Alonso will speak to us on the historical novel, more specifically on a novel he is currently writing about Francisca Pizarro, the daughter of Francisco Pizarro, the Spanish conqueror of Peru in the 16th century. So please help me welcome to UW-Madison an excellent friend and an excellent writer, Alonso Cueto.
Well, thank you very much to Professor Cesar Ferreira, to Professor Alberto Vargas, to Luis here, who is helping us, and to the Latin American, Caribbean, and Iberian Studies, as well as Ms. Sarah Rip and Jerry Byrne, who have made my time here so wonderful. Thanks to all of you also for being here. And I'm going to read a little essay called Searching for a Character in History and in Stories. We readers have a peculiar relationship with the truth. We believe it is of our own invention. We know some facts of reality may inform it, but also that it is fictional. Disillusioned with the experience of reality, with the senselessness of our circumstances, we seek an alternative truth, one made of appealing characters that play leading roles in stories of consonant development. To capture this fiction on the page, writers seek to create characters, situations, and dialogue more enduring, more interesting than those of their known reality. In this process, they aim to satisfy a need common to all human beings, that of fabricating real dreams. Through these dreams, we believe we can take refuge from reality, while at the same time gaining a deeper understanding of it. We continue to seek the truth that literature offers for two reasons. One is what E.M. Forster mentioned in aspects of the novel. Writers convince us that we know their characters. When we read a great novel, say, by Faulkner or Garcia Marquez, we think we are intimately familiar with their characters. We know everything about the life of Joe Christmas, for example, or about that of Fermina Daza. This intimate knowledge is impossible in real life. In reality, we cannot completely know any human being, at least not like we do in a novel. Novels give us the illusion of truly knowing people, and experience reality denies us almost always. The second reason we prefer literary truth is that in it, life appears to have a meaning, the significance the characters give it. A novel can be defined as an encounter of different characters whose diverse aims in life projects intersect at some point. All are after a goal, even when it seems like they are not. Characters such as Don Quixote or Elizabeth Bennet or Anna Karenina, for example, have aspirations and intentions. Even the novels of nihilistic, cynical writers tell stories that make more sense than those of the life we are familiar with. So then, novels offer us two illusions that life does not afford us. One is that we can really know the human beings that inhabit them. The other is that the lives they live can have a meaning, something we cannot often perceive in real life. Perhaps these two illusions give rise to a third, that literary truth outweighs historical truth. What I mean is that literature can reach corners of intimacy that history cannot. It can even recreate historical characters, as we will discuss in a moment. As Balzac wrote in his book, Petty Troubles of Married Life in 1845, a man must have explored every sphere of social life to become a genuine novelist, inasmuch as the novel is the private history of nations. I really love this comment, that the novel as the private history of nations. That is why no one asks writers for proof or a document testifying to the truth they communicate. Their truth is based solely on their power of persuasion created through a form of language enabling disillusionment. In Shakespeare's Antony and Cleopatra, for instance, there is a scene in which Cleopatra receives a pearl from Antony. Cleopatra asks the messenger, Alexas, whether Antony appeared sad or happy when he gave the gemstone to him. Shakespeare clearly invented this detail to make his characters more realistic. We could say the same about the scene in which Cleopatra asks the messenger about Antony's wife, Octavia. She wants to know from the messenger every detail about her. She asks the messenger whether Octavia is tall as she is as tall as she is, whether her voice is shrill or low, whether she walks with grace and elegance. Of course, we will never know if Cleopatra actually asked these questions. But given that she is in love with Antony, it is plausible. Her questions in this scene do not represent a truthful or false reflection of reality. They are part of a fictional truth. It is another truth, an imagined one, which leads us to a renewed familiarity with reality. Referring to Shakespeare's historical plays, my friend Vicente Molina Foix put it this way: they are a version of history in slippers. Accomplished writers are those who can convince us, thanks to the form and structure of their works, that everything they recount is true. In this sense, writers are creators of truth, creators of character. We know that Shakespeare's Cleopatra never existed. It is his invention based on facts about a historical figure. Neither have the most famous of characters of literature actually existed. There was no Captain Ahab, no Colonel Aureliano Buendía, no Rastignac, no Jane Eyre or Elizabeth Bennet, no Vautrin or Jean Valjean or Oliver Twist. Those people never walked the face of the earth. They did not exist, yet they most certainly did exist. They are clearly etched in our minds and in our hearts. Perhaps we could live without some people we know, but we could not live without those characters. To create characters is to give them a dream transformed into reality, without which we could not live. Perhaps most of what I have said can be summoned in this quote by Henry James in his preface to Roderick Hudson, and I'm going to quote Henry James. Reality, universally, relations stop nowhere. Really, universally, relations stop nowhere. And the exquisite problem of the artist is eternally but to draw, by a geometry of his own, the circle within they shall happily appear to do so. I'm always very fond of this image that the writer creates a geometry of his own to make people, readers, believe that relations can be understood in a circle that the writer creates. I also would like to remember here a story told by Mario Vargas Llosa when he wrote Aunt Julia and the Scriptwriter, this novel about his relationships with his aunt and his marriage and so forth. And he said that he really wanted to tell the story of every detail that had happened. But when he tried to put that in a novel, the novel made some demands that he could not fulfill by only being realistic. In other words, the form of the novel had some requirements that mere representation of the truth of the reality they could not fulfill. The novel had some requirements of proportion, of balance, of structure that were not did not allow the strict representation of reality. We could summarize all of these reflections also in a phrase that Merlin Holland attributed to his uncle, Oscar Wilde. Man is least himself when he talks in his own person. Give him a mask and he will tell you the truth. The Uruguayan author Juan Carlos Onetti once told me, I'm quoting from memory, they say that there are many ways to lie, but the most loathsome of all is to tell the truth, the whole truth, concealing the soul of the facts, because facts are always empty. They are simply receptacles that take the form of the sentiment that fills them. Literary truth has another advantage over historical truth. It is irrefutable. Historians can disagree about the exact date of, say, the death of a historical figure. However, they will all agree that Garcia Marquez's character, Santiago Nazar, died on the day the author said he did in Crónica de una muerte anunciada, and that he had a dream the previous evening. It is an irrefutable truth because it belongs to the uncertain but profound truth of fiction. Apropos of these examples, I would like to add that the historical novel always reminds us that it is primarily a novel, even when its characters actually existed. In notable examples of the genre, such as Marguerite Yourcenar's Memoirs of Adrian or Robert Graves' I, Claudius, the characters are always fictitious, a figment of the novelist's imagination. Authors of historical novels are not researching history, rather they are practicing the essential task of all writers, storytelling. As a storyteller, I am always excited when I encounter characters with whom I can begin an intimate relationship. Over the years it takes to complete a novel, writers form a conjugal connection with their characters. They go to bed and wake up with them. Coexistence establishes a pact, both secure and uncertain. Authors must become close to their characters as long as necessary. I am interested in becoming involved with them, assuming their identity, experiencing the world in their skin, while at the same time molding them at my will under the conditions they impose. The word fiction derives from the Latin word meaning to form. Forming characters to become part of them ourselves. That is our objective for truth and fiction. Like all writers, I consider myself a contented servant of the protagonists of my novels. I am capable of breathing life into them and then letting them go on with their lives. Authors are immediately smitten with their characters as soon as they create them. Their established loved pact with them entails a mix of loyalty, respect, love, and creativity. What must characters do to convince us to devote ourselves to them during the years it takes to write a novel? I think the most interesting thing about our characters is their ambiguity, their contradictions, their enigmas, which disconcert us and lead us to go in search for them. I think that what attracts us in characters also attracts us many times of human beings we know, their ambiguities and contradictions. We are fascinated by the mystery of their identity. It is reason enough to continue our search. These thoughts and questions have accompanied me in recent years, especially since I decided to write a novel about a figure who has always enthralled me and fortunately continues to do so. Peru's history has many immensely appealing and enigmatic figures for a writer. I recently developed an obsession for one of them, Francisca Pizarro, the daughter of Francisco Pizarro, the conqueror of Peru. Many people are familiar with the life of Francisco Pizarro. As part of the expedition that discovered the Pacific Ocean, Pizarro was a young man when he reached American shores. He eventually vanquished the people of one of the most refined, prosperous cultures of pre-Columbian America, Tahuantinsuyo, the empire ruled by the Incas. Francisca, the main character of the novel I am writing, was the daughter of Francisco Pizarro and Sisa Quispe, sister of the last Inca ruler, Atahualpa. As such, she became the first mestiza of South America. She was born in the Andean city of Jauja, or Santa Fe de Hatun Jauja, the first capital of the Nueva Castilla Viceroyalty, in 1534, just 2 years after Pizarro and his men captured Atahualpa, her uncle. Her mother, Sisa, was a daughter of the Inca ruler, Huayna Cápac. Her parents' union resulted from a negotiation. The imprisoned Atahualpa attempted to gain his freedom by offering his sister to Pizarro. That is how Francisca came into this world, as the daughter of her uncle's executioner. Her father conquered her mother's empire. Her birth resulted from an act of physical and cultural violence. Francisca's ambiguous identity reflects this tragic origin. Not surprisingly, Francisca had an extraordinarily difficult life. When she turned 3 years old, her father took her from her mother. Pizarro wanted his daughter to be educated as a Spanish gentlewoman rather than as an heir of the Inca Empire. He placed her under the care of his Andalusian sister-in-law, Inés Muñoz, in Lima. Nevertheless, Francisca continued to see her mother. She also regularly saw her father. Inés Muñoz, a major figure in 16th century Lima, provided her charge with a strictly regimented but loving environment. Pizarro's daughter would experience many misfortunes during her lifetime. When she was 7, she learned that her father had been murdered in his house on the main square. Shortly thereafter, she had to flee the city with her guardian, Inés Muñoz. After several months in Quito, where they kept company with Governor Vaca de Castro, Francisca and Inés returned to Lima. Francisca then witnessed the death of her younger brother. Sometime later, she learned of the execution of her uncle, Gonzalo Pizarro, and saw his head in the pillory in Lima's main square. When Francisca was 16 years old, the Spanish crown decided she needed to leave the city where she had grown up to settle in Spain. The king wanted to remove all Pizarro heirs from the colonies. Given the perilous journey she was about to face, the young Francisca had to make a will. She traveled to Spain with her lady's maid, Catalina, as well as with her half-siblings, the children her mother had with Francisco Ampuero, future mayor of Lima, who had received Sisa from Pizarro. Her stepfather, Ampuero, also accompanied them. After reaching San Luca de Barrameda in Spain, the young Francisca was sent to Mota Castle in Castile, where her uncle Hernando, her father's brother, and also a conqueror of Peru, was imprisoned. She was forced to marry Hernando, living with him for 10 years in prison and another 10 years in Trujillo de Extremadura. In that city, the Pizarro family built the palace of the Marquis of the Conquest, where the likeness of Francisco, Quispe Sisa, Hernando still adorn the walls. And this image you have seen here is her face or portrait in the walls of the Palace of the Conquest in Trujillo de Extremadura in Spain. Her difficult life circumstances continued. She gave birth to 5 children, 4 of whom died of different ailments. She attempted to rebel against her destiny, however. After her husband and Uncle Hernando died in Trujillo, Francisca scandalously married a much younger man, Pedro Arias Portocarrero, her daughter-in-law's brother, and the son of the second Earls of Puño and Rostro. She moved with him to Madrid, where she purchased 2 homes and spent her final years. During her lifetime, she witnessed the accession of Philip II, the transfer of the Spanish capital to Madrid, and the Anglo-Spanish War. Throughout this life full of adversity, Francisca remained largely silent, but also rebellious. None of her personal documents or letters survived. Nevertheless, we could know that she took legal action against the Spanish crown to defend her rights, and that she gave considerable sums to build and refurbish churches in Lima and other areas of Peru. The combination of a tacit life marked by so many hardships has always interested me. Being the first mestizo shaped Francisca's destiny. She was born with a complex, violent, diverse identity, molded by those who surrounded her in childhood. Her mother was the princess of a devastated empire, her father the invader of that empire. Thus, she was condemned to be a migrant of her own mind, even before becoming one in her travels. Her migration had several stages. At 3, she was wrenched from her mother. At 16, she was sent to Spain. No personal testimonies of her life exist. So who was this woman really? What was she thinking when her father died, when she recognized her mother, when she lived with her guardian, Inés, and her maid, Catalina? Did she actually feel more Spanish than Inca, as some who wrote about her claim? How did she experience the journey to Spain, her union with Hernando, her widowhood, and her second marriage? How did she survive the numerous misfortunes the world had imposed on her? These questions perhaps have no answers. Rather, they raise other questions. These are the type of inquiries that interest novelists. I suspect that she secretly rebelled against the impositions and that she adopted her Spanish identity without losing sight of her Andean origin. In life, as in literature, characters become more attractive the more enigmatic they seem. Characters shaped by the contrasts and contradictions of their historical context are very current. Today, mestization, the feeling of belonging to two or more worlds, is an experience that all people, from the Americans and many other populations in the world, share. The conflict of identities, the ambiguity of our origins, are the trademarks of modern life. Today, only extremists dare to proclaim the existence of pure races. Francisca was the founding member of our mestizo existence. Over the past few years, I've attempted to assume her identity. Based on historical information, I have tried to reasonably speculate on her experiences and feelings. I have sought both to create and to recreate a character. I think that sometimes I have seen her face and body. Now, I only need to hear her voice, feel her footsteps, view the world through her. I actually anxiously await this to happen as I continue my search. However, I also ask myself if I can achieve this. I have been forming her in the manner that I believe she really was, yet she is also a fictional character. Although her character is based on a woman whose life story I may thoroughly researched, the Francisca of my novel is a character both imagined and imaginary, but also real and accessible. I believe the worst threat to a historical novel is to allow the historical information to drown out the flesh and blood characters. While we must familiarize ourselves with and recreate the context of the epoch, above all, we must maintain the individuality of the characters and their capacity to experience their own emotions and adventures. As such, the weight of historical fidelity should not override the capacity to tell appealing tales of characters as protagonists of their own lives. History should never dominate over stories. To guarantee this, historical figures must become fictional characters. The voice, emotions, doubts, the skin and faces of characters of a novel must always be unique and unrepeatable. Our task as writers is therefore to seek out what makes them extraordinary in the conditions imposed by the structure of the novel. In this case, history is our raw material. It is our starting point. What counts is where our formal imagination will take us from there. The historical novel builds on the facts reality offers us, but only as a beginning. We strive to achieve the fictional and plausible built on the foundations of reality. This is why authors who closely follow the rules of historical accuracy are condemned to write a book rich in information, but poor in imagination and appeal. Writers of historical novels want to communicate a version of an intimate domestic story, but above all, to tell a good story. Even knowing this, I sometimes walk the streets of Lima, where Francisca once walked. Sometimes I see and hear her, or I hope to. I am at ease with her. I ask myself what she would feel when gazing up at the white sky that blankets Lima most of the year. Sometimes I feel she accompanies me. I have undoubtedly learned to love her, but to recognize myself in her, although I will never know her completely. I will happily keep searching for her. And this is how I will live with Francisca till the day I finish this novel about her, and we must finally part ways. Fortunately, the time has not yet come. What will I do without Francisca when the time comes? Few people live such complex, brutal, and exemplary lives as hers. I will never know her, but I will keep searching for her. And when I am done, I will deeply miss her. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alonso, for this wonderful, inspiring text about Francisca Pizarro. There are many issues that we could discuss about this text. But I'm wondering, first of all, you, in the first part of your talk, you discussed the concept of fictional truth and historical truth. Do you find them to come together, or do you find them to be separate truths?
Yes, I would like to add, thank you very much, Cesar. I would like to add that I also think that historians have to use their imagination, not only writers. And sometimes sources in historical truth are different. For instance, an episode there's a moment in the novel where her mother tells her about a very important episode in the history of Peru and of the end of America, I think, which is the afternoon of November 16th, 1532, because that day, the Spanish army was composed only of 168 soldiers, really, meet the Inca ruler Atahualpa and his many
Members of his court.
Of his court, yes. And what happens that day is crucial, to the history of the continent, because when they meet, Atahualpa is accompanied by all these the members of his court, and the Spaniards are eager to capture him, but then they had this requirement, which is called la requisitoria, where a priest comes to the ruler and shows him the Bible and the cross, and says to him, this is the word of God. We represent God. The King of Spain represents God, and you must object to this word. And this was translated into Quechua, or Puquina, but probably Quechua, by a translator who did not know much Spanish. So we never will know what the translator actually told the Inca that the priest Vicente Valverde had told him. The fact is that Atahualpa holds the Bible. Some people say that he tries to open it in the back part where the pages don't open, and he throws it. Some people say that he puts it in his ear, and he doesn't say, and he says, I don't hear any voice, and he throws it. But we don't know really what the translator told him, which is interesting, because maybe the crucial episode for the country is based, the story of the history of the country is based on a mistranslation. You could say that in a way. The fact is that when he does that, when he throws the Bible into the ground, the father Valverde, some people say he screams a Santiago, which is ordered to attack, but some people say that he walks over to Pizarro and tells him what has happened, and then they attack. So also, the history is also sometimes different according to what versions we have of them. But the fact is that that episode, what happened that day, the capture of the Inca and the murdering of so many members of people who were with them, lasted only half an hour. So in half an hour, you could say that the history of the country and of the region started to change. But we will never know exactly what happened, and I become kind of obsessed with what happened that day. I would have liked to be there, really, in many ways. So the difference between the one truth and the other is, but I think that if you write a novel about historical character, you need to know the basic facts. You cannot do what Tarantino does in Inglourious Basterds, that he changes everything. I think that's like a happy fantasy, but you need to start by the facts and then construct from them. But you cannot say that the Francisca Pizarro lived in the 19th century in Holland or something like that. So it made no sense. In order to make the fictional truth believable, you have to respect the historical truth in the first place. I think that's
Which is another way of saying that novelists lie in an informed manner.
in
Am
a
I
foreign
correct in
manner,
saying
yes,
that?
right,
Yes.
you could say that, yes. And it's interesting because so many people think that that she was wanted to was obedient to her husband, to Hernando Pizarro's demands, but I don't think so. I don't think that really happened. One of the reasons I think it's not true is that she managed her Inca mother to be in this palace, to have her face in there, which was clearly if they're not allowed by the
Spanish crown.
and by the church, no?
Mm.
And another reason is that she kept giving all kinds of help for the churches in Lima and Trujillo and Cusco and all these places. And also, I think that this is a friend of mine told me this, that she always had a very wonderful relationship with her mother, but this is kind of ambiguous because it's not, the story is not exactly like the story of big guys against bad guys, no? Because, for instance, Inés Muñoz, a Spanish woman that she had, was very, very loving to her, although she really wanted her to be a Catholic, but was a very loving influence in her life. And even her father, Francisco Pizarro, was kind of ambiguous in the relationship with her. And she, for instance, loved her uncle Gonzalo. So that's why I think it's kind of interesting to understand her, no? And what she really felt in different parts of her life. It's very important for me that there's no letters, no documents of her personal life, only her will. And so I'm trying to find out who she really was, and I don't know if I can do that.
How long have you been working on this project, Alonso?
Well, the COVID-19 has been very helpful. It's been a wonderful thing for me because I started at the beginning of 2020, and suddenly there was no need to travel, no need to leave the house, no need to do anything except what you wanted to do. No, so I started in January 2020, but I've always been fascinated by this character and by other characters in the history of Lima, especially by this other woman, La Perricholi, whom I wrote a novel before a few years ago.
This will be my last question because I certainly want to let you chat with Alonso, but what were some of the challenges that you ran across in creating this particular fictional character of Francisca Pizarro?
Well, I think there's two main challenges. One is to get the facts right, no? To see it is very important now to see if people are drinking wine, to find out if wine was circulating in the city at the time we are telling people we were drinking, and you could say that about everything, no? What the clothes, the language, no? I managed to find out how people insulted each other in those days, which is kind of interesting because there are a lot of this insults always. And the other one, which is probably more important, is to understand what was going on in their minds, what was going on in their conscience, especially in hers. As I say, I've always refused this idea that it's very common when people talk about her, that she was obedient, submissive, and I think that's not true at all.
You tend to think that she was a rebel.
A rebel. Yes, I think so. Well, but at least she is in my novel. I don't know. I don't know if she really was. I think she really was. Exactly. I think she really was. Yeah. I don't know if anybody would like to comment. Talk. Yes, please.
You mentioned race in 16th century because it didn't really, yeah. So how does she think about Or how do you, writing in the 21st century,
Yeah.
imagine a society in which race is not yet,
An issue, or,
well, it's probably an issue, but a different kind of issue.
yeah, a different kind of issue, because it was not very common. But very soon, there started to when the Spaniards went, very few women came with them. It was mostly men, and also the few women that came who went to Cusco, for some reason could not give birth in altitude, and that's been. I mean, it's part of the history of medicine. No, they could not. But so many Spaniards had wives from the Incas, so from the members of Inca royalty, or not, no, or not members of Inca royalty. But so there was a lot of mestizos very soon, including one of them who was very famous because he was a great writer, who was born a few years after Francisca, who is el Inca Garcilaso de la Vega, who wrote a great book called Los Comentarios Reales about the history of the Incas. But there are a lot of mestizos that came very soon after, and mostly they were considered inferior, of course. No, they were not white and not Spanish. But sometimes they managed to achieve, some kind of recognition in the society. But you're right; it's an issue that starts, problem that starts. It's a fact, that the mestizos appear that starts in those days, and is still going on. The confrontation of races, the racial factor is still very important today. But
I was wondering if it was understood more in terms of skin color or more in terms of
skin color, yes.
And I think that the fact that she funded these churches could have socialization as being Catholic makes her rather than Spanish rather than identifying.
Yeah. Probably that part of her is true. Yes, that she was founding all kinds, and also the fact that that she really never learned to speak her mother's language. Could apply to that, but she was really under a lot of pressure. She was really forced by this. It's very interesting. Other cases, like the case of Beatriz Clara Coya, a woman who married Martin Garcia de Loyola later. She also had to marry her uncle's executioner. It was the same story. And there's a lot of famous cases in those days. There's a very famous painting of Beatriz Clara Coya and Martin Garcia de Loyola. Marriage of a mestizo woman and a Spanish captain. At the end of in the second part of the 18th century, the viceroy Manuel Amat y Junyent sends the king of Spain a gallery of images and descriptions of the diverse types of mestizaje. What do you call the daughter of an Indian and a white man? Or what do you call the daughter of a mestizo and an indigenous? And he said, look at this. This is all the gallery of races that we are that are being developed here. So that was part of an intent to understand what was going on, because right now we're not just talking about white and Indian make mestizo, but we're talking about mestizo and white, Indian and mestizo, so forth. So and also the African the African American the Americans who come, which come in big numbers in those days. As a matter of fact, the only one who dies in this capture of the Inca in Cajamarca in 1532 is a man from Morocco who was a slave in the Spanish camp. So it is a application. Thank you for your question. Anybody else? Like
Do you have a title for the novel yet, Alonso?
the title right now is Francisca, Princess of Peru. Because I wrote that's what I'm holding, but titles change, so you never know.
I have a question over there.
Yes, please.
I'm just curious, because you said there's no personal documents that she's written, so we have no kind of window into her mind or thoughts. Have you, sort of a two-part question, what other extant documents, either by other family members, have you consulted? Do such things exist? And then the other is, have you looked at what other women from the time are writing? Like if there are diaries or correspondence with other women in a similar, like mestiza women from the time written, and has that given you some insight into that?
Well, in her will, when she is told when she's 16, you have to go to Spain. You have to go to Spain because we're not allowing any members of the Pizarro's family, direct members, to stay here because it's too dangerous because everybody's fighting. So you have to go to Spain. But in those days, of course, if you took a ship from Lima to Spain, it was very dangerous. There were all kinds of types of threats of pirates and so forth. So you had to make a will. You had to write a will. And in that will, she does say that she loves her uncle, her uncle Gonzalo. So there is a few moments when she says something personal. And then there is a very important diary by the woman who educates her, who gives her, who lives with her, which is Inés Muñoz, and she has a very detailed account of everything that happens in Lima in those days, which is a very valuable source. Inés Muñoz, for instance, she says that today I discovered something wonderful called Kai, comes from Mexico, and people call it palta, which is the avocado. She says this is wonderful this is from the gods, not from the land of Alberto. And then she discovers the tomatoes, and she discovers the fruits from the jungle, and she keeps putting everything in there. And the bread that the Incas made was from wheat, but then she brings all different types of bread made from trigo, and it's a very valuable source. Inés Muñoz is wonderful about making you know what happens. But these, I'm amazed. These times were so dangerous, so violent. The soldiers would come, adventure seekers. There was a legend, that there was some place where some indigenous ruler had been bathed by gold, by gold, and he was called El Dorado, a man who was covered by gold. They were looking for him, and that made all these expeditions to the jungle possible, including the discovery of the Amazon River by Orellana and Gonzalo Pizarro. So it was so dangerous, at the same time so exciting. Then when they started bringing horses and fruits from Spain, and they started doing vineyards in also there. So the beer came from Mexico from a man called Alemán, but they managed to produce some wine also there. But it's so interesting when you get into all the stories. But then again, you have to not let yourself be carried away by all these details and concentrate on the focus of your story, which is what happens to these characters and how their life be interesting and adventurous and how that can form a novel. So it's fascinating to know what happened, but you can never forget what your mission is.
How readily available is Francisca's will, Alonso?
No, I think that, yeah, there is a great historian, Maria Rostorowski. She's a wonderful historian, and she wrote the best book about her, and she consulted the will. Yes, but it's a will is it's something. There's almost nothing very personal about it, except that she wants to. She really tells it. Says in there that she was very fond of her.
Is it in an archive in Peru somewhere?
No, it's in Spain.
In Spain?
Yes.
We have some
Cesar,
messages
Cesar, can you hear me?
for you.
Alonso,
Buenas tardes, muchas gracias por por una
César.
presentación e investigación tan fascinante. Me preguntaba el significado de Francisca para la mentalidad peruana. Soy mexicana e inmediatamente pensé tanto en Malintzin como en Ansaldúa, la nueva mestiza. Muchas gracias.
Yes. Well, yeah, this is interesting because I think that her image has been vindicated, and also I looked into the first son of Hernán Cortés, no, who was he was born a few years before Francisca, no, but this idea, no, of what we truly are, no, of mixture, is very interesting, very actual, no, it's something that is really going on now everywhere. And I think her name is being considered, no? There's a miniseries about her life now that has not yet been
Put on the air.
put on the air, but I think that people are recognizing in her a life that in some way or another so many people now are living, the life of
Multiple identities.
multiple identities, and also the fact that in the origin of everything there was an act of violence, an act of abuse, an act also of abuse against women, that was so related to the beginning of her existence, and how in a way she had to carry with that until her uncle dies, and after that she tried to live a life of herself by marrying this young man, Pedro, and taking him away from Trujillo and living in Madrid, and that's when she really tries to be herself in a way. So my novel starts a few months before she's dead, and she's telling her story, and that's how it goes.
Cesar, can you hear me?
Any
Cesar,
other questions for Alonso?
yes.
Yeah, when can we read the book? Now I want to know what she says.
Well, probably next year,
Alonso,
and probably next year, and
Luis Gonzalez, can I ask a question?
so it will be a bad time for me when, as I said in the lecture, when she has to leave, but I'll try to find someone else, although I don't to write about, although I never know if she will, my new character will be will compare with the one I'm leaving. So yeah.
I just had a question. I think this is really fascinating, really great. And it's obvious that you develop like a lot of empathy and sort of care for us and that. Are you giving her like a good life?
I'm trying to, within my limits, trying to improve her life. Yes.
No,
I'm trying to
estoy
improve
tratando
her.
de hablar con César, pero
That's a secret. I'll tell you.
no me ve.
Yeah, I'm trying to, and I think that in her own mind, she had to find ways of resisting everything that happened, and I'm trying to work on that. Right.
There's a question on the chat. ¿Cuál es el legado más importante de Francisca Pizarro?
I think that the fact that she resisted power by trying to be herself, and I think that's that was made in a very difficult time when she had all the Spanish kingdom and also the Spanish family on top of her, and I think she tried to live a dignified life within those boundaries, and maybe that's probably what makes me feel so attracted to her. I think so, that would be it. Yeah.
Luis,
So,
Luis Gonzalez. Can I talk to Cueto?
She would be like, but she will be somebody that I will never know entirely. But that's what makes it fascinating for me. Like, I think that characters interest readers and writers for the same reasons. They interested people. We are interested in people in our daily lives, not because we don't understand them. Not somebody we understand fully is not interesting for us. We will never be friends with somebody who we actually understand, or much less fall in love with somebody totally predictable. No, we have to be interested and try to live our lives with other people as a search, and that's what I found with her. Even knowing that it will not end, that it will not fulfill my quest. Yeah.
Well,
Please.
thank you very much, and for sure
Thank you
we'll
very much.
bring you back for the work presentation.
Thank you very much. It's been very nice to be being with you, and I appreciate.
Good luck with your novel, Alonso.
You appreciate your being here. Thank you very much, Cesar and Alberto. And
Thank you, Alonso.
Luis comes from a country which is also part of the story. As I said, she lives in Quito for a while, so it's all part of the same story.
Hello, Cesar. Hi,
Thank you very much.
Alonso.
Muy bien.